With Side Order coming soon, Splatoon fans are buzzing with excitement and theories about what exactly this story add-on contains. And while I wait for it, I hope it doesn't fall into some of the same pitfalls that Return of the Mammalians fell into. Now don't get me wrong, Return of the Mammalians was a ton of fun, and it was especially interesting since it did something new with the Splatoon world after the story mode in Splatoon 2 was practically the same as the first game. However, as I played through this mode for the first time a year ago, I noticed there were a few things that didn't sit well with me and some opportunities that seemed to be missed. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that most of this story's problems stem from one thing, and that thing is Deep Cut. But how is Deep Cut responsible for these problems, you ask? Well, strap in, cause it's time for a good old-fashioned rant.
Hey, yeah? You ever wonder why we're here?
Why is Deep Cut here? Like, seriously, what kind of business do they have being part of this? They don't add anything to the story, they're just there. But you know what? That's just my opinion. They actually have their own in-game reason for why they're there, and that reason is... they're bandits. Who want treasure. And that treasure is... a bunch of random junk. What does this have to do with anything? We've just been presented with this deep, profound, world-expanding idea for a Splatoon story mode, and it's suddenly interrupted by these little shits hoping to score some quick cash. Why? Nintendo obviously wants all the idol groups in the story modes, but before, the Squid Sisters and Off the Hook were integrated in ways that made sense. Hell, they didn't try to force Off the Hook into the main campaign of Splatoon 2 and had the sense to wait until the Octo expansion, so why would you just force Deep Cut into this campaign for no reason? It's infuriating and makes likable characters look like complete idiots. But actually, it's fine, as long as they're kept distant from the new Squidbeak Splatoon and their goals, and only step into the spotlight occasionally as a joke, like Team Rocket style. Wait. That's not the case? Well, shit. Up until we first run into Deep Cut, we're given this big mystery of what's going on. The Octarians have fur, there's fuzzy ooze everywhere, and DJ Octavio, the big bad of the first two games, is the first boss. Shows just how much of a threat this new villain is. We meet the new Squidbeak Splatoon, see that there's a giant rocket about to take off, and now it's up to us to investigate further. Alright, let's do that. No, you can't do that, because now the entire story revolves around Deep Cut. They're the bosses of the campaign, and there's more emphasis put on them than the titular Return of the Mammalians. Why? For a campaign with Mammalians in its title, I expected it to focus more on, you know, mammalians? The fact that Deep Cut makes up the bosses of this game is particularly annoying, because they had this really cool idea for bosses staring them right in the face and they didn't use it. Now don't get me wrong, these boss fights are fun, but we could have been fighting twisted versions of different mammals, providing a completely unique experience from what we're used to with Splatoon. Maybe showing demented animals would be a bit problematic for a kid's game, but come on man, if Gloom Hands are fine, I don't see how twisted animals could be worse. The fact that we're fighting Deep Cut instead of the titular Mammalians feels like a change that was shoehorned in at the last minute out of fear that fans wouldn't want something new. In fact, everything involving Deep Cut feels that way. For a campaign about mammalians, I'd expect the characters to focus on, well, mammalians. The only thing the characters focus on are Deep Cut and saving Craig Cuttlefish. They hardly seem to remember the fact that there are Octarians covered in fur, and there's a giant bear looking to destroy the world. It's like they had this powerful, in-depth story for the characters to discover, but were afraid that it was too smart and profound for kids, so we're given this rushed side story that has absolutely nothing to do with the overarching plot. It's honestly kind of insulting when you think about it. Now that I might be overthinking, but what better to overthink than the plot of a video game for children? Anyway, is that enough complaining? I hope so. Let's just move to the climax. As I said before, since Deep Cut takes up the bulk of the story mode, we hardly get any direct story beats involving the titular return of the Mammalians until the end of the campaign. Once you've defeated all 3 Deep Cut members and cleared the rocket of the Fuzzy Ooze, the NSS has one more interaction with Deep Cut, and it's about as underwhelming as possible. Deep Cut, the group that's been a thorn in the new Squidbeak platoon's side this entire campaign. The group that's apparently so important that the titular enemies played second fiddle to them just kinda give up. Or at least they stop fighting the NSS after they just give them this random pile of junk after realizing they don't need it anymore. And just like that, the conflict is over. Deep Cut has their quote-unquote treasure, and now they're best friends with the NSS. I take this whole interaction as proof that this whole conflict was a rushed last-minute change in place of the actual story. So rushed that they didn't even know how to end it. So we're given this half-baked conclusion that shows that the NSS never really took Deep Cut seriously as antagonists. So they're meant to be joke villains after all? Then why has everything until this point revolved around them? I really shouldn't think more about this, because I feel like it'll just get worse. But anyway, after we make our way through the rocket, we're presented with the actual main antagonist of the campaign, which is hard to tell since we've only ever heard him over a couple of obscure phone calls until now, Mr. Grizz, who takes off in his rocket with the intent to cover the world in fuzzy ooze. And this is where the game tries to make Deep Cut have a purpose, but it really doesn't make any sense. Fry and Shiver use their eel and shark abilities to make a path for you to catch up to the rocket, and suddenly Big Man has a spacesuit for you to put on. What? Why do you have this? You're supposed to be a bandit who's been scouring a crater in the outskirts of town. Are you trying to tell me someone just threw out this high-tech spacesuit for you to find? Are you implying that you somehow built this spacesuit? You aren't given any sort of engineering background like Marina, so how do you know how to build a spacesuit? If anything, it would make more sense for the NSS to have something like this, because they actually have friends with significant engineering experience like Marina and Sheldon. So it's a moment of glory that could have been a last hurrah for the NSS of sorts, but is given to Deep Cut instead. Who could have seen that coming? But wait, I hear some people say, you just said Deep Cut has a use in this story. Without Shiver and Fry's unique abilities, you wouldn't have been able to catch the rocket. Well, there's a simple fix to that. Just be on the rocket when it takes off. I mean, it's right there. You're already basically standing on top of it. It can't be that hard to just hop on it right after Grizz. But you won't be able to breathe without Big Man's spacesuit. Well, last I checked, mammals can't breathe in space either, and Grizz seems to be doing just fine. So do you need it? Doesn't seem like you do. So I would say that Deep Cut doesn't contribute anything to this climax, but that would be a lie. They pitch in and help bring us the awesomeness that is Calamari Incantation 3 Mix, which is one of the greatest songs to ever grace this earth. So congratulations, Deep Cut. I can safely say that you weren't completely useless. But in terms of contributing to the actual narrative, you still suck. The more I think about this problem, the worse it seems to get. A lot of these talking points I just came up with as I was writing this script. Before, I just thought of Deep Cut as an inconvenient B-plot, but now I see just how much they took away from a potentially amazing story. And it's not like that amazing story is completely absent. There are still records for you to discover about this lost human civilization, and we get to see how this squid world came to be, and it's great. The problem is that we don't see any of these characters be a part of that narrative. We see some of this at the beginning, with Cuttlefish asking all sorts of questions about what's going on, and how this isn't like the previous conflicts the NSS has had. Hell, even the interactions the NSS has with Deep Cut are fun, so why couldn't those interactions have been about the conflict at hand? It not only would have been funny, it also could have been serious, action-packed, and provided character development. It's such a shame because we could have gotten something so cool, but because of Deep Cut, the whole campaign feels like a standard rescue mission, with only occasional reminders that the Mammalians are part of this too. I like Deep Cut as the idols of this game, but man, they just had no business being part of this story mode, and they took away a story that could have been unique, profound, and actually would have made the audience ask questions. But unfortunately, that story is in the background, something that some fans might not even notice. It's such a shame. So what do you think? Were you able to keep up with my constant rambling? I haven't really seen anyone online talk about this, so I figured I'd say it here. Even if you disagree with me, I hope you'll at least be able to see where I'm coming from. I've already talked about how amazing the background stories are in these games, so imagine what a hands-on story with that level of depth would be like. Even if a product is marketed to younger audiences, that doesn't mean you need to treat them like babies. And sadly, that's a vibe I got while playing through Return of the Mammalians. I just hope Nintendo doesn't make the same mistake with Side Order.